Hello, hello, ladies. Hope you guys are doing well. I am excited to dive into this with you all. Today, we are going to be talking about fad diets, lots of the popular diets from the past and current, and then kind of talking about how they all work and kind of the fallout that we've seen from some of them. So I'm excited to dive into that. Let me real quick, share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. If not, let me know. All right. So, fad diets and their not inevitable fallout. This is something I'm super passionate about, especially, being a weight loss coach and now a functional practitioner. Obviously, I see a lot of women who have been dieting for a long time that have tried a lot of these different diets, and so I enjoy watching, their mindset change around some of these things once we start working together. Um, but anyway, I thought that this would be good just so that you guys can kind of have some information. So the first thing that I always tell people, like when they ask me my opinion on a specific diet, is what are you trying to get out of it? Do you want to lose weight now or do you want to lose weight for good? Because a lot of the diets that people are trying, a lot of the things that are super popular might help you to lose weight pretty quickly, but inevitably gain that weight back. So I always ask, like, do you want to lose weight now or do you want to lose weight for good? Because if you want to lose weight for good, it's going to have to be a slower process. And you're going to have to make a lot of adjustments that you can sustain long term. The other question I always ask is, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to lose weight? Are you really and truly willing to give up carbs for, the next year? Or do you want to be able to enjoy those things? Like, what are you willing to do in order to lose the weight? So we're gonna just kind of dive in to, and then the other question too, and I should have put this in the slide, but like, is I always ask the question, can you see yourself eating like that long term too? Because that's a super important factor when it comes to choosing a diet, is finding a way to lose weight that you can sustain long term, and learn habits around your health. That's a super important factor that I think a lot of people kind of just skip over. So we'll dive into some of these. The first one that I want to talk about is the low fat diet. So this was like super popular back in like the 90s. I remember like my mom doing this one. Some of y'all might have done this as well. But the approach was basically to eat as few fats as possible. Ultimately, this led to cutting out a significant amount of calories, since fats are the most caloric dense macro that there is. So they have, for every gram of fat that you consume, it's 9 calories versus 4 of protein and carbs. And so by cutting fats out completely, yeah, you're consuming a lot less calories. Um, However, that doesn't come without downsides. This led to a lot of companies making a lot of like low fat versions of foods that were just filled with a lot of inflammatory oils, that ultimately did a big disservice to us long term. So the fallout. So you might remember back when we talked about like what macros even are. Like I think it was like we called it Nutrition 101 or something like that. And we talked about the different macros, why they are important, what they do. But fats are the building block to cholesterol. Just a little hormone rundown. So pregnenolone is like your mother hormone. It's at the very top. All the other hormones kind of trickle down from that. Um, and pregnenolone actually comes from cholesterol. So I don't know. It could be a coincidence, but It does seem like maybe there could be a correlation, at least to me. You might think differently, that's fine. But it does seem like there could be a correlation between the low-fat diet and then the increased hormone issues that we see in women today. I see this with a lot of women, especially that are like, my mom's age that did a lot of these diets in the 90s. They're trying to lose weight, they cut out all the fats, then they're eating all of these like low fat products that are filled with these inflammatory oils. And now we have all these women who, are really, really struggling, either struggling with, hormone imbalances or really, really struggling when they go into menopause. And a part of me thinks that maybe it's because, one, we cut out an essential nutrient for hormone function to begin with for long periods of time. I even remember like we would all what like any product that we bought, my mom would always buy the low fat version of it because she thought it was better, when in reality, like it was just full of inflammatory things. And so one like maybe we weren't getting enough fats to begin with. And so that caused some of these hormone issues that we're seeing now. But maybe we also, and it's probably a combination of the two, or it could be because we, added all these inflammatory oils and then our bodies are super inflamed. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like it's just a coincidence that there are so many more hormone issues today than there used to be. I do think that this is a big, big factor in that. And obviously, there's so many other things that could be contributing to the hormone issues, all the endocrine disruptors, birth control, like all of those things. But we spent how many years eating as few fats as possible? Might have something to do with it. So that was that one. So then this wasn't a diet, but phentermine, it was super popular as well in the 90s. I'm sure that there's some of y'all that have used that before. Not a diet per se, but it is worth talking about. This basically works by suppressing the appetite. So you eat less calories. You'll start to see that theme throughout this whole presentation. It also stimulates the central nervous system, which can speed up weight loss, kind of revs up that metabolism a little bit, and then created less of a desire for food, so less calories were consumed. The fallout. So basically, when we turn off hunger cues, obviously it's going to make weight loss easier, right? But the problem with that is we are not actually learning to eat in a way that supports weight loss long term, or in a way that will even allow us to maintain weight loss long term. Because when we just turn off the appetite, yeah, we're not eating. It's like, okay, I could just not eat and be fine. However, like then what happens when you come off of it and you have an appetite and you haven't learned how to eat in a way that supports even maintaining that weight? That's when we typically see, pretty much everybody that's ever been on this drug has gained that back, and sometimes even plus some, because it downregulated the metabolism by not getting enough nutrients. So, and that's my next point. We see a huge number of women with down-regulated metabolisms from years of under eating. And then they will turn to this drug to suppress their appetite even more. So then they're eating even less calories. And so then we've got women who it's like, okay, if I eat over 1,000 calories, I gain weight. And that's not healthy. That is not metabolically healthy. And so that, I mean, and if you're in that position, it is going to cause issues long term with hormones, with gut health, with all of the things. And so, um, this is turning off hunger cues is typically not the answer. Now, there's some things that you can do to kind of mitigate hunger cues, that will make it a little bit easier. But the last thing that we want to do is just completely turn off all of our hunger cues completely. This also can create some issues with the nervous system regulation, which most women have never really addressed before in their lives. When you have something that basically like puts your nervous system into a fight or flight state constantly, it's not good for you long term. That could also, I'm not saying that it does impact cortisol levels, but we can't pretend like, revving our nervous system up and, putting it into that fight or flight state long term doesn't have negative effects. So the next one I've got is is Weight Watchers. This one kind of, oh man. And I know it's still around. I actually know some people who have still done it. And I do know that there were people who had a lot of success and even had like long-term success with this. So I don't think that this one was like super detrimental like some diets are. But I do think that it may have like kind of messed with our minds a little bit. So basically, if you are not familiar what Weight Watchers is, Weight Watchers is a point system to tracking food. So basically, you're tracking calories without actually tracking calories is essentially what it is. Different foods are different point values. You have some foods that are like 0 points, which I don't know how that works because like that chicken that you're having that is 0 points, or I mean maybe it's changed, I don't know, but that still has calories, so like if you could still over consume those foods and gain weight, right? But I don't know. I don't know how it works now. All I know is I remember watching my mother do this one as well in the past. And she did have success, but anyway. So basically this unknowingly puts you into a caloric deficit that leads to weight loss. So basically Weight Watchers will have you eating fewer calories. It has you eating in a caloric deficit so that you're losing weight, but without actually thinking about the calories that you're consuming. So not, you know, not awful. It's not, I didn't see it messing up people's hormones as much or whatever. Maybe it did, but I do think that this diet really created an increase in the negative relationship with food because instead of your food is your energy, right? Like food is what literally gives you the ability to function optimally, right? And instead of looking at food as energy, we were looking at food as points. And the goal was like eat as few points as possible, basically. And to me, I don't ever want food to be thought of as like the goal is not to eat as little as possible and barely function. Like the goal is to be able to eat as much as possible and still lose weight, actually. Um, but I think that this kind of created a negative relationship with food. I think it also created a negative relationship with exercise. I remember watching my mom, like, on the treadmill so that she could earn her points, so she could earn extra points so that she could have like a Christmas cookie. And to me, it's like, okay, exercise really should be looked at as like, okay, we're exercising to build a stronger body, we're not exercising to earn our food. That is not the mentality that we should be having, right? So I do think that while it may not have, screwed up people's, gut health or hormones and as much as some of the other diets have, I do think that it was a factor in some of the negative relationships that women feel about food now, and negative relationships they feel about exercise and their bodies in general. I remember, just the diet culture of the 90s, I think, messed a lot of us up long term, watching watching women like eat as little as possible and whatnot. And that was also the time where it was like super cool to be super, super thin, and all the celebrities had eating disorders, and then we had Weight Watchers in there, and we're, earning our points with exercise. And it was just not mentally healthy for that relationship with food. Okay, let's talk about keto. So this one is more popular now. I don't see as many people doing it now, but a few years ago, this was incredibly, incredibly popular. It felt like everybody was eating a keto diet. So basically, the general idea of keto is eating low carb in order to put the body into ketosis to burn fat. Um, Cutting out, I remember like calories in versus calories out is how we lose weight. You lose weight by being in a calorie deficit. You lose weight by burning more calories than what you are consuming. So cutting out a whole macro group obviously leads to us eating less, right? And then typically to when we overeat, typically we would overeat with things like carbs too. And so that's typically like the one that, we see overconsumption with. So, but cutting out an entire macro group is obviously going to help you lose weight because you're consuming less calories. Weight loss is usually pretty significant at first because people lost a lot of inflammation and water weight and stuff like that. Carbs tend to be carbs tend to make you store more water weight than protein and fat. So, a lot of people would see like, oh my God, I lost all this weight in 2 weeks. Really and truly, it was like inflammation and water weight that was being lost. Um, so most of the people that I saw doing the keto diet were not actually in ketosis. They were just in a calorie deficit, and that's how they were losing weight. Because I would see like a ton of people who were, oh, I'm on a keto diet, but then they would have, it's like they were still eating enough carbs that would have kept them out of ketosis, and they weren't actually eating enough fats to be in ketosis. And so it was kind of, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, you're just eating, it's essentially just a low carb diet that you're eating. Um, there can be some benefits. On a rare occasion, will have a client go into a actual keto diet where they're going into ketosis for healing properties, basically. I don't do that very often, and it's never meant to be a long-term thing. It's like, all right, maybe for 6 weeks, we want to get the body into ketosis because there's some specific things that we're working on that can help with, but not something that I would ever use long-term with anybody. So let's talk about the fallouts from the keto diet. One, this is not sustainable, right? Like, can you imagine going your entire life without pasta? No, like that's just sounds awful. I would not want to live that way. And so typically, it's like people came off of it and then they go right back to eating the way that they were before, and then the weight again comes back because they never actually learned like sustainable long-term habits. And then the other issue that I am seeing, and maybe I could be wrong about this, but I am seeing a really big increase in women with thyroid issues. That where they're not, and it's not always like super bad, but like where their thyroid is definitely struggling a little bit. And I do wonder if the keto diet, with that being super, super popular a few years ago, and now we're seeing all of these thyroid issues, I really wonder if some of that is because of the keto diet that everybody was doing. And again, could be wrong, but carbs do play a really big role in the conversion of T4 to T3. And so when we are, not getting enough carbs for a really long time, there's a ton of women, they like did the keto diet, they lost weight, and they're like, well, this is just the way that we're supposed to eat. We're supposed to eat low carb. And so then they're not getting the carbohydrates, and then the thyroid starts to downregulate because of that. And so I do wonder if that plays a factor in that, honestly, because we need those carbs for optimal thyroid function. And then the other issue that I see with a lot of women, especially like the ones that I work with in, the weight loss coaching, a lot of them actually are overeating because they think that as long as they're eating protein and fats, they're okay. We have like all of these snacks that are like, the keto snacks or whatever, and they're really high in fat, and so then women are eating those thinking like, oh, this is healthy, this is good for me, it's low carb, it's probably fine. In reality, those higher fat snacks are a lot higher in calories than something that doesn't have as much fat in it. And so I do see that where it's like, oh, I'm actually eating way too many calories, and that's what's keeping me from being able to lose weight. And so I do see that, and then it takes some time to kind of come out of that keto mindset because it's like so ingrained in them. So, and then and then now we have carnivore. Like carnivore is super popular now. And I don't know. I know that there could be some benefits. Basically, carnivore is like keto without veggies. That's how I explain it. It kind of it's kind of the same, kind of works the same way. It can lead to ketosis if you're, getting the fats and whatnot. But typically you're again consuming less calories because you're cutting out everything but meat. It has shown to lower inflammation in some people. Some people have seen improvement with gut health with it. And then, it takes advantage. I think probably one of the biggest factors is it takes advantage of the higher thermal effect of food that protein has. So protein is honestly one of the biggest hacks for weight loss. I am not saying go do the carnivore diet. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, um, protein has a higher thermal effect of food than carbs and fats. So it actually requires more energy from your body to break down protein than it does carbs and fats. So essentially, you're burning more calories by breaking down the protein than you would carbs and fats, which is why I typically recommend upping protein intake whenever we are trying to lose weight. Protein is also way more satiating than carbs and fats, which is why, you typically are not going to overeat on protein. I mean, you can, but typically it's going to make you feel fuller for a longer period of time. And so you're not going to be as likely to overeat. You can stay in that deficit a lot easier if you have a high protein diet. However, I do not believe that you should have an only protein diet. I do believe that there are probably some fallouts from this one. One, it's not sustainable at all. Can you imagine only eating meat for the rest of your life? Maybe some of you can. I cannot. There's so many other good foods out there that I want to be able to enjoy. Um, and again, if we just cut all of those things out and we only eat protein for like 6 months, yeah, you may lose the weight, but did you learn anything? Did you learn how to eat pasta in a way that's going to sustain weight loss? No, you just cut it out. Um, so it also, I mean, I know that there's tons of nutritional value in meat, and I mean, again, I think we should be, upping our meat consumption, but I do believe that it probably lacks the nutritional value of all the other foods out there. And again, we're not getting enough carbs for optimal thyroid function. I am of the belief that we were given this whole world with all of these amazing foods, right? And to not eat them is kind of doing our body a disservice. It's like they were given to us for a reason. There's so much benefit from eating a good variety of foods and getting taking advantage of all of those nutrients that are out there. The other thing that kind of makes me question both keto and carnivore is there's just not, I don't think there's enough like long-term studies to show what like the long-term effects of these higher fat diets does to our overall health. I mean, I remember like when people were doing the keto diet, they were like putting butter in their coffee and like eating like tons of butter and bacon. It was like okay, but what's the long-term effect on our cardiovascular health with those diets? That's kind of my question there. Because while I think that, fats are good for us, fats play a huge role in hormone function and we should be eating plenty of healthy fats. To me, it's like, okay, if we're eating 6 pieces of bacon every single day, I just don't think that that's good for our like cardiovascular health long term. But again, there's not enough studies to show like the long-term effects of it, which is why I kind of am like, I'm not a fan. Okay, this one. Oh, this one was real popular again, like a few years ago. I felt like everybody was either doing Optavia or keto. Optavia, however you say it. So basically, these are prepackaged meals from an MLM company. The diet was under 1,000 calories a day, but you felt full because of all the prepackaged snacks that were provided. So essentially, we were eating, all these prepackaged snacks that you would buy like throughout the day that were super low calorie, but also super highly processed. And then like you would have like a protein and vegetable meal at night is what I understand about it. I had a lot of clients that came to me after this diet because they lost weight and then gained it back and then yeah. So obviously weight loss happened because calories were so low. That's going to happen when you eat under 1,000 calories a day. Not good for you, ladies. A 3-year-old needs 1,000 calories a day. We need more than that. The ingredients in the prepackaged foods caused a lot of gut inflammation, y'all. Like essentially, just because something is a diet, it's still highly processed, right? Like we wouldn't want to eat, oh my God, what's a good example? Like no, you wouldn't eat Teddy Grahams all day long, right? Even if somebody was like, oh my God, do the Teddy Graham diet and eat, nothing but Teddy Grahams all day, and then you'll lose weight. And it's like you would look at that and you'd be like, why would I'm gonna eat like a highly processed food all day long and then only eat chicken and vegetables for dinner? Like that, you would question that, but because it was like a diet and people were losing weight from it, people bought into it, right? And then, obviously all of those inflammatory ingredients that are in the prepackaged foods does a number to the body. This also causes the metabolism to downregulate due to super low calories. A lot of women who were under eating, let's say, I know a lot of women who were like maintaining their weight at 1,500 calories, which is not optimal. Like you should maintain your weight at much higher calories than that. But they were only maintaining their weight at 1,500. So then they did 1,000 calories and they lost weight, but then their metabolism like slowed down even more. And so they were, maintaining their weight at more at like 1,200 calories. Well, then there's not anywhere for you to go from there. So, again, the last thing that we want to do if you have a metabolism that is slowed down is eat way less calories. That's not helpful long term. And then again, no long-term habits were learned and it's not sustainable. So, and then we have, and again, this isn't a diet per se, but this is like the new thing. Everybody's doing it. The GLP-1s. So this is like the new popular diet trick. The way that GLP-1s work, and maybe we could do a whole nother live talk on this since it is such a popular thing right now, is by slowing down the gastric emptying so that you feel fuller for longer periods of time. It also helps to regulate blood sugar and so can make weight loss easier for people who are insulin resistant. I'm going to start this by saying I am not against GLP-1s if it is a situation. I think that the risk can be worth the reward if it's a situation where your weight has put you in a very unhealthy position. I have had some clients who, opted to utilize the GLP-1 temporarily so that we could get weight off a little bit quicker because their weight was causing significant health issues. And these were clients who had like 100 pounds to lose. So I think there's a time and a place for everything. But there are some risks involved with it. And we don't know, we don't know the long-term side effects. There is a black box warning that says that this can significantly increase your chances of thyroid cancer, which is something to keep in mind, right? If the box is telling you, then you got to kind of wonder what's the box not telling you too. So we don't know the exact fallout of this one. I have a lot of concerns about it. I think that it's being very, very over prescribed. I think that it's basically like being handed out like the modern, like the modern day phentermine, right? Like, oh, you can't lose weight here. Um, to me, I don't feel like we can pretend that slowing down our body's natural process does not come with negative consequences, right? I have seen a lot of women who have done some form of a GLP-1 who then end up with a lot of gut issues. I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody. I also know people who have done it and they're like, "Oh, I'm fine. My gut feels healthier." Okay, great. But I think the bigger issue that I see is that the majority of women that are taking GLP-1s are not actually metabolically healthy enough for sustainable weight loss. And this is kind of being used as a band-aid for those other issues. Again, I see a lot of women who it's like, you were already under eating, and now we're doing this GLP-1 that's causing a decrease in appetite. And, so of course, like, yeah, now you're losing some weight, but we're doing more damage to the metabolism, essentially. We're not getting enough food for healthy hormone function, where there's some gut issues that can come along with it. Um, so to me, if somebody is using it, if somebody is super insulin resistant, weight loss has been super impossible, they've got, 100 pounds to lose, and their weight is really causing an issue to their health, I can see where this would be helpful, maybe. For somebody who wants to lose 20 pounds, they are undernourished and overstressed, and they don't have sustainable long-term healthy habits. I don't see this being the solution. Even though people are having a lot of success with it, what about their long-term success? Because it's still a fairly new thing and we have not studied it long enough to see what does that look like for us in the future. So again, not against it if it's something that you feel like you feel really strongly about. I know people have very strong opinions and feelings about it. This is just kind of my opinion and what I see in the world that I work in. And I want just to be, I'm here to educate, I'm not here to judge if that's what you decide to do, but I want women to be informed and educated so that they can make decisions that are beneficial for them. So anyway, the best way to lose weight for good is focus on your metabolic health, right? Like, make sure that your hormones are functioning optimally. Make sure your gut is in a good place. Make sure you're not super inflamed. Make sure you're balancing your blood sugar. Like, all of these things will help with sustainable long-term weight loss. And then learn how to eat in a way that is sustainable long term. Learn how to eat the foods that you enjoy. Like, your diet, I always say this, like, your diet doesn't have to suck. Yes, it requires some sacrifice and stuff, but if you can learn how to eat in a way that promotes weight loss, but you still enjoy it, then you're able to maintain that. Like, you're able to lose the weight and then keep it off. And the other thing that I will say here too, and I don't think I put a slide for this, is whatever diet that you decide to do, you need to have an exit plan. If your diet doesn't have an exit plan, you will likely gain that weight back, right? No matter what diet it is that you decide to do, if you don't have an exit plan, the weight will probably come back on. That's something that, like, I'm super passionate about with my clients, is like, okay, I don't want you to just lose the weight and then me like release you into the world. Like, I'm going to spend some time with you after you've lost weight to slowly increase calories up to where your maintenance should be so that you're able to maintain your weight. And then I want to teach you how to eat at maintenance so that the weight doesn't come back on, because I don't want repeat clients, right? That's kind of my whole thought process there. So hope that was helpful to y'all. If you have questions, please drop them in the comments. We can come back and answer some things. I'm not trying to sell y'all on anything, but if you do need help finding the right diet for you, if you need help figuring out how to eat in a way that promotes weight loss, but is also sustainable long term, then Nourish and Thrive might be the solution that you need. If that's the case, you can book a clarity call with me at any point. If you want to reach out to us directly, you can email us. But we would love to be able to help you if that is something that you feel could be beneficial to you. Let me just go in here and see. I don't see any comments, but things could have gotten missed. So, anywho, I hope that was helpful for y'all, and we will see y'all later.